Welcome to the Not Old Better Show. I'm your host, Paul Vogelsang, and this is episode number 228. Today's show is part of our Fitness Friday series, and it's another great one in our Fitness Friday programs. We'll be hearing from returning guest Sabrena Jo, who will join us in just a minute. Sabrena Jo is a favorite with our Not Old Better audience and is the American Council on Exercise, that is ACE, the Director of Science and Research Content there. Sabrena Jo will be here to share some important information about the talk test. The Not Old Better Show Fitness Friday News. And we've got some excellent Fitness Friday news from the National Institute on Aging and the NIA Go for Life programs. Of course, you can find out much more at NIA Go for Life on Facebook, Twitter, and on the web at go4life.nia.nih.gov. That's a lot of letters there, so we will put links in the show notes for you. Today's message from Go for Life and the National Institutes on Aging is a great one, and you can find it in detail on the NIA Go for Life website. But briefly, in order to provide your body and mind with the 4 types of exercise that NIA Go for Life emphasizes, that being endurance, strength, balance, and flexibility, you need to strengthen your muscles and you need to lift or push some weight. Stronger muscles can make it easier to do everyday things like get up from a chair, climb stairs, carry groceries, open jars, and even play with your grandchildren. Lower body strength exercises will improve your balance too. Try a few of these easy strength exercises today and check out the NIA Go for Life website for free, detailed but simple instructions to follow and excellent images depicting each exercise for upper body and lower body emphasis. You'll find those in detail. Again, check out the NIA Go for Life program at go4life.nia.nih.gov. Again, we're going to put links there, but enjoy this program. It's just full of wonderful resources, and it allows you to exercise at home. You can go outside, but you don't always have to go to a gym, so check it out, NIA Go for Life. Up next, our conversation with Sabrena Jo, American Council on Exercise Director of Science and Research Content. Sabrena Jo, always so good to talk to you. Welcome to the show once again.
Thanks, Paul. It's great to be here.
Yeah, so nice to catch up to you always and talk a little bit about fitness and what's important, and then, of course, research, your specific area. Well, Sabrena Jo, I want to ask you a little bit about the talk test. And let me just tell you of a personal experience. I rode my bike to the gym today. I was on the trail. I happened upon another rider, and he and I got into a quick little conversation during which I was thinking about the talk test, thinking about talking to you later today, which we're doing now. And I had an insight that I think was telling for me, and that was I was out of breath. Now, I was trying to keep up with this younger rider, with me kind of being an old guy, maybe still being a little competitive there. I was trying to keep up with him. I was breathing pretty hard, and so I was having a hard time kind of coming up with full sentences. I was able to, kind of bark out a few things. But maybe if you could just give us a brief review of the talk test and why it was first developed.
Sure. This is a great question. I'm glad you did a self-test because...
I'm listening to you, Sabrena. I am actually paying attention here. You're motivating me to do this stuff.
Fantastic. Well, hopefully when I'm done explaining it, you'll understand kind of where you fell in that in the talk test.
Yep, good. And you...
Okay, case sample of 1. Good. I love it.
Good.
Well, so you asked about how or maybe why the talk test was first developed, and it's an interesting story because I think most of us have heard that one way to track or monitor your intensity is by your maximum heart rate. And one method that is a quick and easy way to guesstimate your maximum heart rate is the equation 220 minus your age. And 220 minus your age gives you an estimation in beats per minute of your predicted maximum heart rate. And as you can imagine, there might be a lot of error associated with that because everyone's an individual and everyone's heart beats differently. But nonetheless, this is a very common equation that people use to try to understand their maximum heart rate. And the reason that's important is because even our published guidelines today, when we're talking about giving someone recommended exercise intensity, sometimes it's based on a percentage of your maximum heart rate. And as I just mentioned, the problem with that is everyone's large general equation doesn't really apply to everyone. And that's the reason why researchers started to become more interested in a more subjective and meaningful way to understand exercise intensity. So that's why several decades ago, researchers started looking at something called the talk test. And as you described in your anecdotal story earlier, is that if you're working out so intensely that you can't really speak and string several words together to make a complete sentence, then you're probably working too hard. And by that I mean you're probably working at an intensity at which you can't maintain for much longer. So you have to stop or either back off your intensity, which is fine. But if you're trying to go for a workout that say lasts 30 minutes long, if you keep having to stop because you're overexerting yourself, then you're not really accomplishing your goal. So the talk test then is a very simple way that exercisers and trainers who coach exercisers can help individuals understand what is the right intensity for me. And it's not based on an equation, and it's not based on your heart rate even. It's really based on your breathing rate and how hard you feel that you're working. So it's very subjective.
So in that way, does it effectively monitor exercise intensity, or is it just so internal to the person? Or if I had a conversation with you during this bike ride, would you be able to judge, okay, that's not Paul really, talking normally. He's really stammering.
Yes. The simple answer to your question is yes, you can effectively monitor exercise intensity by doing this talk test. And actually, ACE supported some research recently that really looked at how well the talk test holds up to other common methods for monitoring exercise intensity, like the one based on a percentage of your maximum heart rate. So the way the talk test works is this. We know that as exercise intensity increases, so does your ventilation or your breathing rate, the number of breaths that you take per minute. And it usually does this in a somewhat linear manner. So it means that the harder you work, the more quickly you breathe, the more rapidly you breathe, which makes sense. However, there's this breaking point or this crossover point where you're going along with your exercise intensity, and then you notice, wow, it's way more difficult to breathe than it was just a few seconds ago. And it's at that point that we have realized that you're kind of almost going into something called the anaerobic threshold or anaerobic metabolism, where you're no longer really using oxygen to fuel your movement. Now you've switched over into anaerobic mode. So it makes sense then that it would be difficult to maintain that intensity if you're pushing it in anaerobic mode when you're no longer able to really use oxygen as your main source of fueling that metabolism fire.
So would there be some alternatives that you might suggest then? I mean, in addition to just having a sentence or two with this fellow rider on the trail today, if I were working with a coach, if I were working with somebody like you, would you say, Paul, stop for just a second. I want you to try the Pledge of Allegiance, or I want you to recite after me, something like that. Are there options here?
Yes, there are options. And so the way this works is at any given time during a workout, you can recite either by memory. If let's say you're on a treadmill or you're outside running and it's not safe to look at something to read it. Or if you're on a stationary cycle, like a lot of people are in some of these studies that I'm referring to, you can read something that's about 100 words or so long. But the Pledge of Allegiance works just fine. But what you're trying to do is you want to be able to string together words without gasping for air. And if you can't string together 5 to 10 words without gasping for air, then you're probably entering into that zone that you're no longer in your aerobic zone, for lack of a better word, and you're kind of crossing over into the anaerobic. So the way that you monitor your intensity then is every once in a while, try to string together some sentences. If it's difficult to speak, all you need to do is back off a little bit, such that your intensity then allows you to talk in more complete sentences. And what we found is if you can gauge your effort or kind of maintain your effort just below the point where it becomes difficult to talk, then you're actually right kind of in the mid to upper range of what we call vigorous effort. And that's really great for improving your aerobic fitness.
So some of this is perceived exertion then, and stop along the way and just try to string 5 or 6 or 5 to 10 words together. There might even be a ranking you can use on a perceived basis for your intensity. Is that what you're almost getting to for us as well? I mean, might we say from 1 to 10, here's where Paul might be in terms of his ability to string together 5 to 10 words?
Yes. If you're a person who likes numbers, which it sounds like you are.
I do.
Some people find success with using a simple scale like 0 to 10,
okay,
with the numbers kind of representing how difficult it is, with 0 being not difficult at all, like sitting on the couch, where 10 would represent maximum all-out effort. So you might think of where you're doing that, let's say, medium to vigorous effort, which is right below the difficulty speaking phase, kind of right where you want to be. That might be represented as, 6, 7, or 8 on a scale of 10. And if you can kind of keep your intensity, your effort in that 6, 7, or 8 out of 10 zone, you're probably going to get the most results in the least amount of time, because you're really developing your cardiorespiratory efficiency and fitness in that zone. This
is so helpful. Good to know about results-oriented exercise, and so helpful to be able to refer back to a simple test, a talk test that we might use in order to establish where we might be in any given exercise session. Anything else you want to add about the talk test, Sabrena Jo?
Well, I've made it sound very simple, and it really is simple. You could take the advice that I gave just now, and you could use it to your advantage to help monitor your intensity going forward. You could also get really nerdy about it and work with a trainer who could give you a more official talk test. I mean, there are protocols and there are ways to really, like I said, get nerdy about it, but really you don't need to. I mean, I've given you all the information that you need to be able to monitor effective intensity during your workouts. And what I like to tell people is, instead of worrying about numbers and heart rates and buying expensive monitors that you strap on your body and taking your pulse with your fingers, all that stuff, you don't really have to do that, as long as you can take an honest assessment of how you're breathing. If you're finding it difficult to breathe, you're probably working too hard. And you should feel like you're breathing at a faster pace than normal when you're exercising versus when you're at rest. But it should be a pace that and a rate of breathing that you could maintain. It shouldn't feel impossible to maintain. So if you can kind of figure that out and what that feels like for you, I think you'll be just fine going forward. It's a great self-check to monitor your intensity.
Good. That, again, so helpful to talk to you and important to work with a professional. But in those moments when we're not alongside a professional, good to know what our intensity level might be based on our own personal perceived exertion level and our own ability to do a quick assessment. This is just so important for our audience to know. And Sabrena Jo, thanks as always for joining us.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. I can't wait to talk with you again.
Yeah, we'll look forward to it. My thanks to our guest today, and please check out our website at notold-better.com for more information and conversation. And thanks to all of you, my wonderful audience, for your charming, encouraging, and advice-driven emails with show and topic suggestions. Please keep them coming at info@notold-better.com. Be sure to follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Not Old Better, and you can find us on Facebook as well. We are Not Old Better there on Facebook. Podcasts of the Not Old Better Show are available on iTunes, TuneIn, Stitcher, Google Play, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Also on Amazon's Alexa. How are you today, Alexa?
I'm doing great.
Alexa, play the Not Old Better podcast.
Getting the latest episode of the Not Old Better Show. Here it is from TuneIn.
You can always find us online at notold-better.com, where you can find all of our archives. You can share a link, you can get in touch, and I look forward to hearing from you. I'm Paul Vogelzang, and please, everyone, let's talk about better. The Not Old Better Show. Thanks, everybody.